Alright guys, Murph's here, and today, by viewer request, we are going to discuss self-defense insurance. Now before we get into this, I do need to go ahead and cover a couple of caveats. First off, I am in no way some sort of legal authority nor representative. I am not a lawyer, I am not in some way affiliated with legal type means, and am not an expert in them. In addition to that, I'm also not a financial planner, nor am I an insurance broker or anybody who's really knowledgeable in those types of things. So this discussion we're going to have today is just that. It's a discussion amongst friends. What I really want to get into in this video are some of my thoughts and impressions and stuff that you should look into if you want to pursue self-defense insurance. So there's going to be no actual conclusions in this video, as much as there's going to be lots of questions that you will need to go answer afterwards. If you're looking for like actual advice in these types of circumstances, you need to go find somebody else to talk to. There might be another video. In searching around doing research for this video, I did not find anything that wasn't like sponsored content, which automatically makes me a little suspicious, if I'm being completely honest. It's kind of getting a little bit ahead. We'll get into that more here before we're all said and done. All right. What is self-defense insurance? Well, self-defense insurance is insurance that you utilize whenever it is that you have been involved in some sort of self-defense incident resulting in bodily harm or death to somebody else. That's the purpose of it there. It's just like car insurance being there in case you get into an accident, or renter's insurance, all those types of things. It's insurance just like a lot of the other stuff out there. What are some of the costs that might be involved with the self-defense shooting, or, really potentially utilizing any type of weapon? Well, there's quite a few things. First thing that you need to remember is that you're the only person who knows for sure that you're the good guy in this case. And honestly, decisions that were made in the process of getting into your self-defense situation could even change that balance as well as far as the law is concerned. So when the police show up, they're not necessarily going to default to treating you like the good guy. It's not a Hollywood movie where, you're not necessarily going to get pats on the back about, how you did a great job and you took another one off the street and boy, the police wish they could do what you just did and all that kind of stuff. You could very likely be treated like a criminal. You could potentially be arrested. You could spend at least a night in jail, if not longer, and potentially charged with murder. All of these things because you hopefully did everything that you were supposed to do and were justified in your shooting, but that still needs to be proven in a court of law. It's not just an accepted fact because you said, hey, I'm the good guy. What are you guys doing? I'm the good guy. It's not how that works. So with that, if they actually do decide to go through with pressing charges and all that kind of stuff, you now have bail that you're going to need to set up, which you're potentially going to have to get in touch with a bail bondsman. That's expensive all by itself. Depending on how long it takes for them to decide to arrange your release and all that kind of stuff, you're missing work. And if you work hourly, that's potentially problematic. Now, if you don't work hourly, let's say your salary, that doesn't mean that if this drags on for a long period of time that your employer is not going to be like, well, it's been fun, bud, but have a good day. An employer could choose to do that type of thing, especially if you're not necessarily in the best standing to begin with, which sometimes happens in the workplace. Sometimes you don't get along with people. Their personalities don't mesh and they're just looking for a reason. You could potentially be providing them this reason on a silver platter. Oh, that's good. Oh, that's good. In addition to that, you also have lawyer fees because lawyers charge by the hour and they are not cheap because they do something that really only they can do and they kind of get to charge whatever it is that they want to charge. You are probably want to go ahead and get the best lawyer that you can afford, but if you're in a situation where you're no longer receiving income or your income has been drastically slashed, that's really going to play a part into how long you can sustain court trials and fees and all those types of things. There's a lot of stuff that goes into fighting criminal actions against you. That's quite costly, potentially. In addition to that, if you want, expert witnesses and all that kind of stuff, that's additional money. And we're not even necessarily discussing different personal aspects of this as well. If you were involved in a home defense shooting or something along those lines, you potentially shot up your own home. You put bullet holes in, perhaps some of your expensive belongings. Now, of course, holes in walls can be patched and belongings replaced, but, bad guy might have just like bled out on your carpet. Well, that's a biohazard, and you're gonna want somebody pretty qualified to come in and clean that up. In addition to that, there's also the mental strain of everything that is going on, not just the trials and all that kind of stuff, but also taking another human life. And I've known people who were involved in justified shootings that they were found to have been righteous in their actions and were still conflicted about the fact that they took a human life. It's a thing that happens. Even if you know that you were dead to rights, you were 100% justified in everything that you did, and you would make that decision easily. Again, it does not mean that it's easy to live with. That's just how things work sometimes. That's just looking at your side of it. If there was a family member somehow involved in the overall shooting engagement, if your kids witnessed you off somebody, there might be some mental issues going on with that. That's completely understandable. So you might be wanting to look into a therapist at that point. They can also get quite expensive as well. Mental health is not something to trifle with. It's not something to overlook. It's actually something that's a major problem in this country to begin with. So I would encourage you to not necessarily deny yourself those capabilities. Now, those are the personal attributes of this. We haven't even looked at civil matters at this point. If you get involved in a self-defense shooting and you shoot out, in the process, you shoot out some business's front window, they might want that replaced. And they may come after you in civil court. In addition to that, the family of the dude that you either injured or killed might want some reparations as well. They might want help. They might want you to have to pay for hospital bills or funeral bills or anything along those lines, and may come after you in civil court. One of the important things to keep in mind is that a finding in criminal court has no real impact on civil court. So you are still 100% culpable to that court and any of the decisions that it makes in the process of trying to figure out where restitution belongs. These are all things that concealed carry or self-defense insurance could potentially help you out with. Now, with that, what all could be offered? Well, first off, they could offer you 24/7 access to a lawyer, which means that your first phone call after your self-defense situation should be to the police to get the paramedics there. And your second phone call should be to them so that you can go ahead and start getting a lawyer, legal counsel, all that kind of stuff, so that you don't potentially get yourself into more trouble than you want to be in. They're going to cover up to a certain point and up to a certain cap their legal fees, bail, bond, all those types of things. You can also get help with some of the civil considerations. You can get a wide variety of coverages that could also go for like biohazard cleanup, to have somebody actually have a professional come in and clean your carpet and get the remains of that person out of there in a sanitary method, as well as like access to therapists and all those types of things. Those are pretty groovy. However, we need to go ahead and talk about some things, because there are quite a few companies out there that offer these types of services, but not all of them may be what it is that you're looking for, or maybe what you think that you're actually getting. So actually, I found a website that compared a lot of the different available self-defense insurances that are out there. And I'll throw the link in the description if you guys are interested in looking into that. And I would highly encourage you to do so if you're looking into this type of thing. One of the things that I found most interesting right off the bat was, are they backed like insurance? Well, I thought we were talking about insurance. Why is this even a question? Of course they're backed like insurance, right? They are insurance. That is not necessarily the case. Some of these companies are more or less just like crowdfunding. Whoever it is that pays into a large pot of money, and then that pot of money gets used to be able to assist you in the circumstance that you need help after a self-defense shooting. But they are not regulated by an insurance company or any of the regulations that cover insurance companies or anything along those lines. So potentially you could run into a situation where they don't pay out everything that they're supposed to pay out to you, because it's like it's almost like a credit union at that point. They are working in the interest of all of their investors. And if they throw all of the money at you, then they can't really cover anybody else who might need their services, would be the justification they would use at that point. Others are backed just like insurance. You pay in X amount, which is going to give you the amount of coverage that was agreed upon. It's not going to be entirely based around how much it is that you paid in. Now, keep in mind, guys, that I'm kind of putting this into broad strokes because, again, I'm not a financial planner. I'm actually a barely functioning adult when it comes to finances. So don't necessarily take my word for it, but understand that there is a difference between them. And that is a very important distinction to make sure that you understand when you go into it. Now, also, of course, they're going to cover you for different amounts, and different plans will be able to give you coverage for like family members. That's something that may be potentially important to you. What about the recovery of firearms and all those types of things? There's a lot of other little things that play into it as well. But another outstanding one that I think is very important is coverage in X number of states. That I find very concerning. Now, if you're somebody who never leaves your hometown or your home state, you just pretty much are a homebody like that, and you don't ever plan to travel anywhere, or at least you don't ever plan to travel anywhere and expect to defend yourself, then that's fine. You don't have to really be worried about having coverage outside of your state. If you're somebody who travels, like myself, that might be a really big issue. The last business trip I took was like to New Mexico. I was in Albuquerque. I can tell you right now, Albuquerque, pretty sketch place. If you ever have a chance to go, skip it. Pass, hard pass. I could absolutely see myself getting into a self-defense situation. And if I had insurance, I would want to have the comfort of knowing that I have coverage in that state. I would find that to be very important. If you do even a modicum of traveling, it is important for you to be able to have coverage in those states. In all states. Okay, there's considerations. What about cost? Now, there's a bunch of companies out there, so this is not necessarily a comprehensive coverage of what everyone is that you can get, but on average, you're running between $240 a year to $520 a year. And that is, of course, going to be scalable to you because pretty much all these companies offer at least like 2 packages as far as coverage is concerned. So, it's different cap points for where they'll cover, lawyers or bond or any of those types of things. Like there's a lot of stuff in between. Or maybe at this package level, you don't necessarily get help with recovering your firearm, but at this level you do. And then you also get like civil court help and all that kind of stuff. A lot of stuff, there's a lot of like ebb and flow back and forth and all that kind of stuff to pay attention to whenever it is that you're talking about that particular subject of cost. Now, some companies even go a little bit above and beyond where they have like signing packages where you get like a pistol safe or something along those lines, and you get discounts with certain companies or discounts from certain instructors, and you also get like access to seminars and all that kind of stuff with like lawyers or self-defense practitioners that talk about like different legal aspects to make you a more educated self-defense practitioner. Those are really interesting offers, and those are of course scaled right along with like the different coverage and all that kind of stuff that you get. Like USCCA is really big about that. So you could wind up getting a lot of bang for your buck, pun intended. However, do you have to have this coverage? As far as I know, presently in the United States, there's not a single state that requires you to have self-defense insurance. If you go overseas, that dynamic changes a little bit. I had to have some form of insurance when I got my hunting license in Germany. I would imagine that you would run into similar things in a lot of in the other countries that have more free access to firearms in Europe, like a lot of Eastern Europe and also Switzerland and stuff like that. I don't really know. It's not really in the purview of this discussion. We're primarily talking about the United States. So you don't have to have it. But are you dumb for not having it? That is a much more difficult discussion to have, to be completely honest. I do think there are some tangible benefits to having this coverage. But I would not be so bold as to make a wide sweeping announcement for your financial state, because there's a lot of people who are living pretty tight as it is, and honestly, if the first thing you identified was that self-defense and the defense of your family was really important to you, and you went ahead and took the step to get a firearm, I would consider you to be taking steps in the appropriate direction. Just like if all you could afford at that time was a high point. Okay, fine. I should hope at some point you would upgrade your coverage, or you would upgrade your firearm beyond a high point once funds allowed. It's kind of the same overall concept with insurance. Now, one of the things that I find interesting about the whole insurance discussion in general is that less than 1% of the population will utilize their handgun in a self-defense situation. Whereas it'll be like 1 in every 368 people will be involved in a car accident per 1,000 miles driven. That's a pretty big difference right there. Everyone that you know has been in a car accident at some point in their life. Not everyone you know has had to defend themselves dynamically, and not necessarily resulted in like court appearance and all that kind of stuff over it. You know, maybe bar fights or something along those lines. But we're talking about like self-defense situations resulting in death, where the police are most definitely going to get involved. Not everyone you know has necessarily done that type of thing. Already, if we look at those statistics, that almost becomes an argument to like say you don't need to conceal carry. And I don't agree with that. Having been involved in a self-defense situation before, I feel that there are some lessons you should only have to learn once. And if you could avoid learning lessons the hard way, that's always preferable. So we utilize that justification for why it is that we carry a gun, because we would rather have and not need than need and not have. You could use this same logic for concealed carry insurance, but I would put it on that same scale as the high point. If you're in a financial state to where, you know, $520 or less, depending on what type of coverage and who it is that you're getting it from that you're looking at, if you're looking at that cost and it's not that big of a deal to you, then that's fine. Invest in that 100%. I encourage you to do so. If you're at a point where you're still trying to make ends meet, you're eating a bunch of ramen, and this is the difference between, you know, gas in the tank or having concealed carry insurance, 100%, you do you, boo. Whatever decision is the best for you is what you have to make. I dislike when somebody else makes decisions with someone else's money. That annoys me. It's not your finances. You don't get to tell somebody that they have to spend X in order to, you know, have good gear or have a good gun or anything along those lines. It should all be scaled to what it is that someone can afford, and I consider insurance to be the same type of thing. So with that being the case, Murph, do you have self-defense insurance? And the answer to that is no. That might be a surprise based on what it is that we've talked about thus far. Let me explain. The first thing that is a massive turnoff to me about self-defense insurance is it comes across like snake oil and a carpetbagger trying to sell it to me. All of it is entirely emotion and fear-driven sales tactics, and I hate those with a burning passion of 1,000 suns. Now, honestly, Murph, is that a really stupid reason to not go with something that does have some benefits? Absolutely, I 100% agree with you, and I'm reevaluating my life. However, that is one of the things that super annoys me about it. It's all this, well, what if you do need it, and all those types of things, where the logical odds are quite low. So I have not necessarily put it that high on my to-do list, as opposed to attending training, buying ammunition, you know, generating content for the channel, all those types of things. Like, that's something that holds more of my interest than concealed carry insurance or self-defense insurance. It is something that I keep thinking about, especially since it's so prevalent in the community. I have friends who have the insurance. I see lots of people talk about it. I've seen like USCCA or US Law Shield set up like booths in gun shows and gun shops. They've come and given like little seminars at like shooting courses that I've been to, which kind of annoy me because I would rather be putting rounds down range instead of talking about what happens if I ever have to put rounds down range. But, you know, to each their own on that one. So no, I don't have it. It's unlikely that I'm getting it anytime in the near future, but it is something that I do frequently reconsider. All right, guys, I think that pretty much covers my thoughts on this particular subject. Pretty short video, and at least in relative terms to the recent ones that I put up. But if you have concealed carry insurance and have had to use it, you should definitely speak up in the comment section. And I would really like you to come over and share your experience at the Murph's Law Facebook page, which I'll put the link in the description of that as well, as I always do. There's a lot of people who could benefit from like unbiased, not paid for or sponsored content or discussion on this particular subject. Because like I say, every time I've looked into it, all I've seen is sponsored content for it. And that does not help change my opinion of the snake oil thing and carpetbaggers and all that kind of stuff. So if you had the experience, I'd love to hear about it. But with that, that's pretty much what I got. Have a good day.